up. Outwardly, everything's perfect. I travel the world on my own, travel around South America, US. So high performing, and we see this often. The same drive to make people high performers, intelligent, creative, perfect kind of combination for an alcoholic. That's why you see all these actors, Olympic athletes. There is a reason for that. There's a genetic pairing that happens. Let's stick with my story for now. So grew up ticking all the boxes externally, not really owning my worth, still some real core values around lack of self-worth and lack of value in who I am, especially in the context of relationships. But then I met a beautiful man and we got engaged and everything looked shiny on the outside. It looked great. I had a very successful career in HR. I launched a consultancy business. I launched a podcast, very much because it was also questioning, like, what's wrong with me? Like something's wrong. Like I'm in pain. I'm lonely. I don't value myself. Like why? Sometimes when I drink, I am the last person standing. Like I can't stop. So this is only starting to happen occasionally, but I'm doing everything to the extreme. I had an eating disorder when I was 19 and I got through it through sheer willpower. I saw the pain that it was causing my family. I stood on the scales one day and I thought, if I continue to do this, I will die. And I forced myself to eat. Now, that was never resolved. So there were all these, it was kind of popping up, this complex trauma was popping up in different ways. Eating disorders, you find a lot of alcoholics and addicts who had eating disorders. Again, it's about control. It's about complex trauma. These are all interrelated. So, you know, the body keeps the score and it's starting to kind of rattle me and say, something's not right, something's not right. So I studied coaching, but more for myself. I wanted to just understand it and work on myself. And then decided I was sick of the bureaucracy of the leadership teams and everything that you have. And because in all this personal development work, I was getting closer to who I am, what matters for me, living by Buddhist principles, starting to meditate. And it just didn't align to be in that type of environment anymore, especially in media and advertising. So kind of Mad Men environment. So in launching my consultancies, HR consultancy and coaching, also happened at that time is I didn't have the same level of accountability to showing up on a Monday morning. And we see this with people also who have endless financial resources. The lack of consequences and accountability can help the addiction speed up. Now, you wouldn't believe this. I started to realize that I had a problem with alcohol because the morning after the night of, I'd feel really anxious and a drink would fix it. I went to the doctor and said, something's going on. Like I'm drinking too much and the next morning I feel anxious. And she prescribed me Valium, which in retrospect is just insane. She prescribed me the pill form of alcohol to deal with it and said, maybe you should look at your drinking. Absolute insanity that someone could be so uneducated around addiction and mental health. But that's how it is. And this is why, you know, I say to people, see a specialist, because the general level of knowledge around mental health and addiction, and also the splitting out of mental being very separate from the body, is just insane. So starting to think I have an issue. Get together with the man. We move in together. Key thing that happens here. So I was living in this neighborhood, Bondi, if anyone knows it. Lots of parties, lots of fun, very strong sense of tribe. Knew all my neighbors, knew the people who ran all the stores, loved it. Felt like I belonged, felt like I was part of. And then I moved away from there to move in with my then partner, who was working for the airline, so I was away 50% of the time, and had a daughter who had never met any other women in his life. So he thought that might be quite easy actually, because he'd broken up with the mum before she was born. So hopefully she's not going to kind of wish I was the mum or anything like that. Kind of, I'll have a clean slate. Ooh, Howie, underestimated that one. But anyway, again, not her fault. Circumstantial stuff that all adds up. Absolutely not her fault. In fact, the poor kid having to witness me in addition, how horrific, how absolutely horrific. And so I moved in with him. And at the same time, my sister, who's only 18 months in age, who I was very close with, who I used to live with for a period, she got married and had kids. So all of a sudden, like, I had no access to her anymore. She didn't even pick up a phone when she had a newborn, which is fair enough, but that was the reality of having a newborn and that responsibility. And my friends went off and got married and had young kids. So the people that were there for me all day, every day, my tribe's missing overnight. And my new beautiful partner was away 50% of the time. And I didn't have the same accountability around work. So I started drinking during the week. I started drinking, I couldn't stop. And it just ramped up. It just escalated and escalated till I'd drink for once I drank for 2 weeks, vodka in bed. And left in an ambulance, thought it was still all kind of a misunderstanding, something that had gone a bit pear-shaped. That had to happen a number of times before I realized. I tried doing geographicals, so we broke up, wedding, in terms of trauma, we got a whole other story here, going into a lot more detail around being engaged and having to cancel 2 weddings, the wedding site, selling the wedding dress. We were right close to the wedding when he called it off. And he just said, I can't watch the woman that I love kill herself in front of me. And so it was a very, very painful time. And rehabs, still a lot of denial for me, still thinking the denial is just so thick. It's part of the condition. I could not see the reality of how bad things had gotten that I just couldn't drink anymore. So I pushed on for years, causing more pain, moving to Byron, getting thrown out with flatmates, getting thrown out because they go on drinking binges and couldn't stop, and then literally calling the ambulance myself, relapse, recycle, and so pulling myself out of every one of those relapses, having my own business too, so having to make up an excuse of why I'd missed my own event or podcast, and then earn back everybody else's trust, and then for the few people who I knew, convince them, because I was also a desperate people pleaser. So, in that codependence, again, very typical of complex trauma sufferers, I had to convince everyone else that I was okay, and I felt it was my responsibility to make sure that they felt safe, my mum felt safe, that my friends felt safe. That was exhausting. So by the time I pulled myself out of a relapse, by the time I went through all that process, I needed a drink, I was so exhausted. So this went on for years. And then I started going back and forth to Bali. I had a big relapse in Bali and went to a rehab, met a soul sister and went, okay, this has got to stop. I'm skipping a bit. There's one memory where I was like, no, I'm going to actually try to start to get sober now. My final relapse in Australia, I was in the hospital. It was the day I was meant to be checked out, but I was all confused. I was in a Valium haze, so they bring you down on the Valium so you don't have a seizure and a heart attack. And I knew my dad was supposed to come and pick me up. They were amazing. Talk about testing unconditional love. If I ever thought they didn't love me, they really proved how much they love me, So I really feel for people who don't have the support of family and friends ultimately, because I don't think I'd be alive if I didn't, honestly. So this final day, and I got the times wrong, and I thought he wasn't coming anymore. And I was lying there in the hospital bed, and I was like, this is it. No one's coming anymore. I've done it. I've pushed them all away. It's over. I've done it. Everyone's left me now. And he came around the corner. My dad walked around the corner. And I was like, this has got to stop. This has to stop. I have to find a way. This has to stop. So that's the decision that I then made to be sober. I still relapsed a couple of times after that, you know, which is very normal, a couple of big relapses. But that's when I decided. I went to Bali, had a relapse, got some time up, and then got into the AA community. And then it was the things that I did, and I'll end here, was I got into a rehab, met tribe, found meetings where I really liked the people. I'm like, I party with these people. Like, these are the kind of people I like, you know? So I found a good meeting that I really liked. I did 90 and 90. I found an incredible clinical psychologist with an expertise in trauma and addiction. I did meditation. I did yoga. I did volunteer work. And I continued to do my work, which is aligned to my purpose. And these things are what got me to 6 years